Day 2 of the MLB Draft is done. We're halfway home. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On MLB Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to Locked On MLB Prospects, your home for all things minor league baseball. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby, freelance baseball writer and podcaster. Thank you for making this your first listen. Every single day, we're proudly part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And the everydayers know today's episode is made possible by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Anybody who was here with us on the live show on Sunday, there's no way I'm going to ever get that read wrong ever again, because I did 39 of those on Sunday. Okay, so day 2 of the draft is done. We are halfway home, similar to what we did last night. It's been a long day, no notes, just vibes, pour a drink, sit down, let's get after it. Looking at some of the draft hauls. I don't have a ton of notes here. We're going through the draft tracker on MLB.com. First place I went, Washington Nationals, okay? The big conversation in this entire draft was, does Dylan Crews go number 1 overall or does he not? He goes number 2 to the Washington Nationals. The slot value's right at $9 million. And so the rumor, the conversation was he wanted 10. Either way, he's probably going to get more than 9 to sign. And when you look at the day 1 and day 2 of the draft, you can see Washington is expecting to have to pay Dylan Crews more than $9 million. So they finished up day 1 with third baseman Yohandy Morales out of the University of Miami. Most people think he's going to hit enough to contribute offensively. He'll play good defense at third. I'm a little bit less high on Morales than a lot of other places are. I think MLB.com had him as the 20th overall prospect in the draft. They took him at 40. I'm not necessarily sold on it there. But then after him, they take a prep pitcher, who we're going to talk about because I like Travis Sakura, a prep pitcher, and then they take not only a bunch of collegiate guys, they take a bunch of fifth-year guys, like guys that literally cannot go back to college. Grad transfers, fifth-year guys, the guys that you sign for $25,000 or you sign for $50,000 when the slot value is $230. Like, that's the kind of guys that they took in the entire back half of the draft. Now, Washington did the best that they could to make sure that these were guys that could contribute to the organization, right? A lot of these guys are Power 5 university guys, multi-year starters. Andrew Pickney, the outfielder from Alabama, was the 4th round pick by Washington. Gavin Dugas, the infielder for LSU, was the 6th round pick. They had a shortstop from Oklahoma State in the 5th. They had a pitcher from Vanderbilt in the 9th. They had a shortstop from Indiana in the 10th. Like, they're going for multi-year starters in power conferences with most of these picks. They had a guy from Lamar University in there, but for the most part, they're going with guys that maybe don't have the ceiling that you would expect, but have relatively safe floors. You know who they are. And for the most part, you think that they're going to work out in your organization, give you more organizational depth. So that's fine. But what it means is all of the extra money, it looks like, is going to Dylan Crews at number 2 overall, and then prep pitcher Travis Sakura in the 3rd round. 71st overall pick. MLB.com had him as the 40th overall prospect. I think I had him somewhere around that same place. But 6'6", 230 at a Round Rock High School in Texas. So perks a lot of ears. That's obviously a big baseball area. But big fastball. And if you have listened to our shows with our friends over at Locked On Nationals, you know this is how Washington works, right? It's the conventional scouting. This fastball sits 98, can touch 101. And it has that new thing that a lot of teams are looking for, where it's a really flat angle coming in. It's not somebody who's coming over the top and it's coming downhill towards the plate. It very much is almost in a straight line from the hand to the backstop. So, but flat approach angle, can run it up to 101. He has a splitter as well that comes along with it. There's a slider, so slider, splitter, fastball is the combo. And it's something where 6'6", again, 230, there's still projection and stuff in there. And he's going to be an overslot guy to sign. Like, you're going to have to pay him more than $1 million to sign because that's the slot value for pick 71. But what this means for Washington is you, in essence, have gone for safety and floor over upside with all of your picks, except for the most part, Travis Sakura and Dylan Cruz. Now, Travis Sakura is a right-handed prep pitcher. So that is obviously a very risky profile, and there's no guarantees that's going to work out. You'll find out. Come back in 4 years, and you can see. But Dylan Cruz is going to have to be what everybody thought he was for this draft to be considered a success in 3 years or 4 years or in 5 years. We can give it a grade now, and really the grade that we're giving it is not how good are these players. The grade we're giving it is how good did you do at matching the values we have on these players to where you got them on the board. Like, that's the grade you're giving now. The grade right now is kind of useless, honestly. But in a couple years, when you go back and you look at this draft, if Dylan Cruz isn't a 65 overall future value player who can take your team to the postseason, this draft's probably not going to be a successful draft for the Washington Nationals. And it's just a very slim margin. And I understand the value of a guy like a Dylan Cruz. You have to hope he works out, because if he doesn't, like I said, it's this entire draft, maybe not down the drain. You're going to find guys who can contribute at the major league level. Just about every organization can do that at this point, but it's just your upside is tied into those two guys. So something you definitely have to work on there. Continuing to go, I spent longer than I intended there on the Washington Nationals. Continuing to kind of go through some of these boards, looking at Arizona's draft is really interesting to me. So day one picks, you get Tommy Troy out of Stanford, probably going to play second base, but shortstop, second baseman. You get third baseman Gino Groover out of NC State, and you get pitcher Caden Grice out of Clemson in the competitive balance round. Love the Caden Grice pick. You open up day two with what was widely considered to be probably the best player left on the board in Virginia Tech outfielder Jack Hurley. I think MLB.com had him at like 36. I had him as a top 30 player, and he ends up going at pick 80. So you do that. You follow that up with lefty Grayson Hitt out of Alabama. And so the first 5 picks, you've really kind of nailed these first 5 picks. And to go along with that, you can keep going. The 6th pick in the draft, in the 5th round for the Arizona Diamondbacks, is Kevin Sim, third baseman out of the University of San Diego. His dad was a slugger in the KBO. I want to say his dad had like 300 plus home runs. And so I really kind of love what they did with a lot of this stuff. You see they go and they grab Philip Abner, a lefty pitcher out of Florida. Again, if you're good at developing pitching, take a pitcher from Florida, because they don't do it. Everybody, if you have learned one thing from this show in the last week, I hope it's that Florida cannot develop their pitchers. But they finish off day 2. They grab 2 pitchers from Dallas Baptist. So part of me wonders, was this the scout saw 2 things, or was there something here that they know that we don't? And when in doubt, just kind of assume that there's something here that they know that we don't. But either way, it's an interesting kind of dynamic. I like what the Arizona Diamondbacks have done in this draft. I think they've done a good job of maximizing their spot at being at 12, having that one competitive balance B round pick, and then getting a combination of upside and value. In just a minute, we're going to talk about some of the really interesting choices in this draft and some of the drafts that have gone a little bit differently than I expected. We'll do that next, right here on Locked On MLB Prospects. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Going to a sporting event or whatever it is, like a concert, a theater show, a comedy show, whatever it is, it shouldn't be stressful. The whole idea of these things is to go and have fun and to enjoy yourself. And so that's why the Game Time app is such a useful app. You don't have to plan months in advance. You can go through the Game Time app and you can see last-minute deals on tickets for events in your area. You get an image of what the view would be from that seat. You can buy that right there on your phone. It's like 3 clicks and you're done. And the best part is you're protected by the Game Time guarantee. You will always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less than what you paid on Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It is the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay, so we're looking at some of the interesting drafts. There's a couple teams that did things that I wasn't necessarily expecting them to do in this draft, or just drafts that have looked different from what they did in the past. Now, the everydayers know I am an Atlanta Braves fan. And so, real quick, I loved some of the choices Atlanta made in day one. Hurston Waldrop, I thought, was a fantastic get by the Braves. Cade Kuehler out of Campbell in the compensatory round was a good choice. You look at today, they get a third baseman out of the University of Oregon, Sabin Ceballos. But what was odd about this is 8 of their 11 choices were pitchers. That's not the odd part. We know that. That's what Atlanta does. They develop arms, they develop pitching. So that's fine. What was weird about it was they're all righties. Like, every single one is righties. And I know that I said in day one that there wasn't a lot of good left, like there's like no college lefties high on the board. And there wasn't a ton of lefties, it felt like, available where they were picking in the day one. But to get through 10 rounds, to take 8 pitchers and have none of them be left-handers is just kind of, I don't know, weird. And Director of Scouting Ronit Shaw said, talking to the media after the draft, that was not anything deliberate on their part. They're not deliberately targeting righties. They're not deliberately avoiding lefties. It's just how the talent that they liked and evaluated broke on the board when they were getting ready to pick. So, okay, I have no reason to think Ronit Shaw is lying to me. But, there's always a but, it's the Atlanta Braves. And the Atlanta Braves have been, and I know that I'm a fan, so yes, you're going to grain of salt this. The Atlanta Braves have been one of the best teams in baseball at developing starting pitching. It's like Cleveland, Tampa Bay, Miami, Atlanta, let's throw Los Angeles in there. Like, those are like the 5 teams who have really done a good job of developing pitching. Cincinnati's getting up there too. But so when you see a trend like that, I know that they said that there's nothing to it, it's coincidence, but it's hard to know, is it actually coincidence? Or is there something that they're not wanting to share yet? Have they figured out some sort of inefficiency in the market? Some sort of developmental thing that works better with righties than lefties? Is it just a ploy to get Max Fried to feel uncomfortable so he re-signs so that he can make sure that there's a lefty in the organization? I don't know, but it's just really interesting, and I wanted to make sure that you knew about it because it's I don't think I've ever seen that before. I don't think I've ever seen a team take that many pitchers and none of them be left-handed. The Tampa Bay Rays are having an interesting draft, and I say that because in some ways it reminds me a lot of what a Rays draft would be, and in some ways it's completely different. So their first 5 picks in this draft were all position players, and I know that the stereotype of the guys that Tampa takes in the draft, they take either super ridiculously power guys like Xavier Isaac, or they're going for really good defenders with really good hit tools and then trying to develop the power. This was kind of a mix without really doing both. They got Braden Taylor from TCU. He's listed at shortstop. He's going to be a third baseman. They got him at pick 19. They followed that up with a prep shortstop, Adrian Santana. Then they take a Mississippi State outfielder in the second round, Colton Ledbetter, who I like Colton Ledbetter a lot. I'm a fan of Colton Ledbetter. And then starting on day 2, they take Trey Morgan from LSU, who is really interesting because I see a lot of similarities to Trey Morgan with Kyle Manzardo. Kyle Manzardo, and that sounds ridiculous at first, but hear me out here. So Kyle Manzardo is a first baseman that is not your prototypical first baseman. He's not a massive hulking slugger type. He's a high batting average, good defense, but painfully slow. Kyle Manzardo may be one of the slowest players in baseball. And so like that's the profile of Kyle Manzardo. He's at AAA right now. He's in Durham. Yandy Diaz is nuclear this season, and so Manzardo's just waiting his turn. You go and you get Trey Morgan, again, another guy out of LSU that doesn't fit the profile of a first baseman. He's got fantastic defense. He is probably the best defensive first baseman in college baseball. So he is now, obviously that's not true anymore, but he was he's more athletic than most first basemen. He is a decent runner. He can cover some ground at first. He's probably average speed. He's played outfield before, but very, very good defender. To go along with that, he's got very good hand-eye coordination, very good pitch recognition. He rarely swings and misses. You catch him with a breaking ball, changeup, doesn't matter, right? But he doesn't make a ton of quality contact. He's not hitting with that power. And so to me, this is something where, and as I'm talking about this out loud, I'm noticing the trend. You had Nate Lau, one of those two, I can never remember, but you had him, who was another type of guy that's not the prototypical slugger at first. Then you have Kyle Manzardo. Now you have Trey Morgan. So there's something in Tampa where they are comfortable with not having that prototypical power hitter at first base. And they've been one of the teams that's been on the front of a lot of these analytical trends. So I wonder if this is something new in baseball. Is this just an adjustment to the shift? What might this be? But I find it really interesting. So they get him, and then they take a fifth position player. They take Texas A&M shortstop Hunter Haas, and then after that, they just go with a ton of pitchers. Most of them are collegians. They get one prepster. Trevor Harrison, the righty out of J.W. Mitchell High School, I think, in Florida. Not the first guy in this draft from J.W. Mitchell, now that I think about it. And so he's probably going to be over slot. But then they get a lot of larger school pitchers. TJ Nichols from Arizona, Owen Wild from Gonzaga, Drew Dowd from Stanford. Big schools, right? Adam Boucher from Duke. And so it's an interesting draft because it's not really the way that you think of the Rays approaching these things. You think of the Rays as, and yes, Trey Morgan's a good defender with a really good hit tool, and I know I said that that's what they're looking for, and this one's different. But it just, the focus early on some of the bats, like paying a premium for shortstop Adrian Santana out of high school, doesn't feel like this is a thing the Rays normally do. So I find it really interesting. You're probably not going to underslot him. He was somewhere around 35 to 40 on the board. You got him at 31. And so I'm curious to see what these bonuses come in at. I think the Rays are a team to watch for day 3 because they're going to be able to go and grab some incredibly talented prepsters. We have their name for the third segment. That are going to take extra money to sign. They're in a great position to do that because not a lot of these guys outside of, and even really Adrian Santana, not a lot of these guys should cost a lot extra to sign outside of their slot. So they're in a good position. Another one where I went way too long. I had a couple other teams I wanted to get to real quick. The San Francisco Giants. Interesting draft, right? So they get a couple position players, all shortstops, kind of mixed between, not all shortstops. They get Bryce Eldridge, the two-way player out of the state of Virginia. But then they go Walker Martin, prep shortstop. They go Cole Foster, college shortstop. Ahuna, college shortstop out of Tennessee. Between them, they had pitcher Joe Whitman from Kent State. So I like some of these picks. I like the versatility. I could see Ahuna and Foster playing short and second for a decade. with Casey Schmidt at third base, and you've got a really young infield for the next decade. At the same time, in the 6th round, they took Luke Schleiger, who is a wonderful human being. He's also a 5'9" catcher, 5'9", 175 out of Maryland. And so it's just really, I'm not 100% sure if the 6th round is the place to take a guy who profiles at best to be a backup catcher. Just interesting decisions here. I know it's partially a new regime. We don't know what they're going to do, but just found it interesting. Wanted to mention another team real quick, the Cardinals. The St. Louis Cardinals, I've talked about, they've struggled to develop impact pitching. They have tons of outfielders. So what did they do? They took 4 outfielders and 5 pitchers and literally nothing else. They took no shortstops. They took no catchers, nothing. They took 4 outfielders, including 3 in the first 4 picks, and then 5 pitchers. And some of these are all, for the most part, big college guys who have, we know the ceilings on these guys. Quinn Matthews from Stanford's probably the best one of them, and he's, I think, at best, a mid-rotation guy. And so it's just the continuation of a trend of St. Louis not getting impact starters or even pitching prospects that have the ceiling of becoming impact starters. Don't really know what they're doing. Anyway, in just a minute, we're going to get into day 3 of the draft and what you can expect. We'll do that next right here on Locked on MLB Prospects. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at BetterHelp. This is something where if you've thought that maybe I don't quite know exactly what I need, maybe I'm the St. Louis Cardinals, and I don't exactly know what my organization needs to be successful in the future, and you need somebody to talk through it with you to help you come to the realization that you need to take a pitcher that has a legitimate chance of starting a playoff game, then therapy would be right for you. BetterHelp, if you're thinking of trying this, if you're thinking of having a professional to talk to better understand you and the way you go about making your decisions and doing things, BetterHelp's a great way to do it. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire. You can get matched with a licensed therapist. If for some reason that vibe's not working, they're saying, listen, you need to look past the conventional scouting data about strikeouts and look to see what their fastballs do to figure out what the ceiling is on this pitch, then you can switch to a new therapist anytime for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnMLB to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnMLB. Okay, so the draft is half over, and the way that this works now going forward, day 3, some things are a little bit different starting here. So I'm going to tell you a little bit what's different, and then some names to watch for as far as incredibly talented players who, as of now, are projected to be going to college, but this is where you might go after them. So the big difference once you hit the 11th round is $150,000 of the signing bonus up to that amount counts, anything over that amount. So anything over $150,000 counts against your total draft pool. So if you sign a guy for $140,000 in the 11th round, none of that money counts against you. So you can do as many of those as you have picks. But here's the rub. Anybody who does not sign in the 11th round or later, you do not lose that slot value from your draft pool like you do in the first 10 rounds. So if you take a guy in day 1 or day 2 of the draft, you have to know that they're signing because that's a lot of money you lose if they don't. Starting in the 11th, you can take that shot. You can literally, it's a lottery ticket. If you can get one of these prep players that is like top 50, top 75 talents that's still on the board, if you can get one of them to commit to you and sign with you versus going to college, then hey, if you save money for it, that's great. And I mentioned earlier some teams that are in positions to do that. So Cameron Johnson, left-handed pitcher out of IMG Academy. He's a top 50 player. He's the best player left on the board. The assumption obviously here is he is going to college, but he is available there. You can draft him and you can make him an offer. And if he declines it, you don't lose any money. Now, you don't get that pick back next year. That's the flip side of this, but you don't lose any money. Couple other guys to watch for: shortstop Roche Cholowski. Terrible with names, we know that. Third baseman, shortstop Trent Carraway. Left-hand pitcher Zane Adams. Outfielder Will Gasparino. Outfielder Caden Sorrell. These are all top 75 players. And then just inside, I think, 85 to 100, you've got a couple pitchers. Right-hand pitcher Joey Volko. Right-hand pitcher Liam Peterson. And left-hand pitcher Jake Brown. These are all top 100 talents that are still on the board that, again, you can try to sign. If they sign with you, great. If they don't, you don't lose any money out of your pool. So if you saved some money, if you saved some space, you've got a couple shots here. There's also a college guy. I had him at like 68. A lot of people had him in the 70s, but Tanner Witt, the righty out of Texas. He would have been a first-round pick had he been healthy. He had Tommy John in 2022. He only pitched 10 innings this year. The expectation is that he's going to go back to college to rebuild his value next season and then re-enter the draft. But he's another guy who is there that you can go and try to sign to see if it works. And teams have found good players in the back half of the draft. MLB.com had a little blurb about some of the Hall of Famers, or to be expected to be Hall of Famers, like Albert Pujols, who were drafted on day 3. I mean, and it's now a lot of these were not recent. The most recent was Pujols in 1999. But the point is, you can find talent in day 3 of the draft. There are plenty of guys. If you want to follow along with this, day 3, it is streamed on MLB.com. It begins at 2 p.m. Eastern. That is the only real way to watch it. And by watch it, it is a backdrop. There is a host. There is a voiceover announcing the picks. And there is Jonathan Mayo and Jim Callis from MLB.com, or MLB Pipeline, really, breaking down the picks as they have information on these guys. It's always the fun game to play is on day 2. How long does it take for somebody to get called that they don't know? And who's the first one that doesn't know a player that's picked? That was a fun game to play this afternoon. I got frustrated because a couple picks I was watching, I didn't have scouting reports on these guys. So day 3 of the draft coming up today. We'll have some more shows this week. Going to be different locations. We're traveling as a family this week, so that's why I wasn't actually at the draft. But in the meantime, if you have questions for the show, we're bringing the mailbag back. I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Show's on Twitter at Locked On Farm. Best way to get a hold of us, definitely our subtext. Links in the episode description, links in the show notes. Until tomorrow's show, remember, it's always a great time to pay a minor leaguer.